No, that's my lawn, Earl. Earl, no, the tree line is my yard, Earl. We can't say that. This isn't done yet. This isn't done. Hey, welcome everyone. Another beautiful day in Mr. Frank's neighborhood. Except for Earl, my next door neighbor, who doesn't realize the tree line is where my yard starts, and his yard does not start on the tree line. So me and Earl gonna have a little conversation afterward about what's going on. Put on the jersey here. Almost in frame. Now we're good to go. Earl! Turn off the leaf blower, Earl! Jeez. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. A lot better than Earl's gonna be in about 45 minutes. Me and Earl having a few issues. That's okay. We're here, we're gonna talk about some Cold War. Have a warm glass of freedom. That's good. That's good. Okay, where we last left off, talked about Joseph Stalin, human garbage. Vladimir Lenin, also human garbage. Karl Marx, never had a job in his life, probably human garbage. Beria, certainly human garbage. Khrushchev, eventually human garbage. A lot of people were talking about a lot of human garbage. Talk about some of the ideological differences, the impacts of the Cold War. Okay, let's actually get to some of the beginning things. Haters on point. So, 11 minutes or less. I've already wasted 2. So, the essential question for this video is, what do you think actually caused the Cold War? And there's a lot of historical debate kind of about this. Certainly, as you can tell, this is probably one of my favorite eras of history to talk about. But let's backtrack a little bit here. I got some notes to keep me on point as much as I can. Also, how sweet is the staff ID photo? You guys remember that? Remember we used to have a building we used to go to? And we'd like sit in like desks and rows, and my hair looked normal and I had a mustache. I miss those days. Okay, in 1917, Vladimir Lenin takes over. Russia turns into a communist state. 1922 to 1924, Stalin begins to take over. We already went over how in the Stalin regime, anywhere between 20 and 40 million people killed. Communism killing around 100 million people total in the 20th century. Let's put the graphic up. No? Okay. I'm going to get a guy on that. So, beginning in the 1920s and 30s, Stalin's goal is world domination. That is the goal for really all the communist leaders. They all want to dominate the entire globe. Communism cannot survive if it can't expand. That's one of the issues, one of the many issues with the communist economic model, is that its idea of resources means it has to continually be conquering more and more nations. So in the 1920s and 30s, the U.S. government begins being infiltrated by communist spies. Some of these individuals end up rising up to fairly high levels. Others are found out fairly quickly, but the reason why I bring this up is because during the 1920s and 1930s, most American politicians just are pretty indifferent to what Stalin's doing and what's going on in the Soviet Union. Many American politicians don't feel Stalin to be a big deal. One of those individuals is President Roosevelt. Now, there's some historical debate on how much of Roosevelt's, not cabinet, but people inside the Roosevelt administration had communist leanings. I've read different things kind of going both ways on it. Certainly there were some individuals that were actually members of the Communist Party. Other individuals certainly overblown a little bit. Elger Hiss was an actual communist. That's been pretty well documented now. But, so for a variety of reasons, Americans are fairly different to this. And when World War II breaks out, if you remember, the Soviet Union and Germany, they sign a non-aggression pact. And they split Poland in two. So Germany goes into Poland from the one side, Soviet Union goes in from the other side. We don't talk about this much because we were allies with Stalin in World War II for a period of time. What the Russians did to the Polish inside of 1939 to 1941 is very similar to what the Nazis were doing to the Polish citizens. Not the Holocaust and death camps, but certainly mass graves, things like that. When Germany invades Russia in 1942, along with the United States entering the war in 41, we are uneasy allies. FDR believes he can control Stalin. Stalin isn't that bad of a guy. In all actuality, Stalin is continually manipulating FDR through the course of this. Okay. When World War II is over, there's a big power vacuum. And by 44, 45, the writing's on the wall that more than likely the Allies are going to win this. So we'll start our what causes the Cold War at the Yalta Conference. At the Yalta Conference, FDR, American president, Churchill, British Prime Minister, and Stalin, a piece of human garbage. Still good, a piece of human garbage. They meet together to decide what the post-war world is going to look like. Obviously, the United States and Great Britain are concerned about Soviet expansion because, again, by 44, 45, even though FDR feels Stalin is someone he can work with, someone he can kind of guide, the fact of the matter is there's enough people inside of Washington, D.C. who recognize, okay, like, the Soviet threat is a very real issue. Let's try to stop Soviet aggression as much as we can in a post-war world. So Stalin makes all these promises and agreements with FDR, none of which he's going to actually follow through on because, again, he is human garbage. One of the things they want to do is split up Germany into 4 different sections. They would split up West Germany into a British section, a French section, an American section, and eventually all those sections would unite together, and the Soviets would have their sphere of influence on the other side, and then at a certain point in time, the two sides would unite back into a Germany, and then they would break up the city of Berlin in the same manner, split up in those 4 sections. That was one of the things decided. In the post-war world, the Soviets promised not to be aggressive, that they would allow free elections in these countries, so any country that had been liberated by the Soviets would then be allowed to have their own free elections to determine their government. And Churchill's telling FDR, don't trust this guy. Now, one of the issues, though, is also at Yalta that Soviet spies already knew what the American game plan was. They had so infiltrated our government that they kind of knew what what was going to happen and what our plans were. After the Yalta conference, Churchill telegrams FDR and basically says everything's falling, just like I said, he's not following through on any of this stuff, and it was true. That Stalin wasn't going to follow through on any of these ideas of letting these free elections happen, or really the spheres of influence. His plan was, because he knew what the American MO was going to be, is after World War II is over, they're going to break down their military and go back home. And he knew that in that breakdown, he'd have the opportunity to then swing into the rest of Germany and possibly the rest of Europe and basically take over most of the world. Churchill recognizes this, tells to FDR. FDR still doesn't really want to do too much to Stalin here because he believes he needs Stalin to finish off Germany and Japan for World War II. That's Yalta. At the same, almost got ahead of myself. Shortly after, President Roosevelt dies, and what comes to his place is Harry S. Truman. Harry S. Truman could not be more different than FDR. FDR came from a very privileged background. FDR came from a very wealthy family. FDR is an idealistic person. Harry Truman is a realist. He knows what the world really is. He's a tough, foul-mouthed, I swear all the time, individual. He understands that strength is needed in this situation. And at the Potsdam Conference, which is a conference right before the end of World War II, that Truman reveals to Stalin about the A-bomb. Stalin isn't impressed because Stalin already knew they had the A-bomb because of all the spies and stuff. But Truman begins to understand that Stalin is not someone that he can work with, and Stalin is not someone that he can necessarily trust. So what ends up happening is when World War II is over, and this may be the big point of everything, but I had to give that background because there's a thread that runs through all of this, that these things don't happen in isolation. The United States wants to go home. They want to break down. And their hope is that European countries, traditional powers like France and Great Britain will come in, step up, and that they will, in this power vacuum that now has been left in the world, that they will retake their spot and stop the Soviets from being the predominant power in the world. Here's the problem. After World War II, France is in no shape militarily. Great Britain is destroyed militarily, destroyed economically, and really does not have the power to actually do anything. And reluctantly, the United States understands what the Soviet threat, maybe not is just quite yet, what this could be. This is an evil, tyrannical form of government that will enslave everyone it touches. We're the only hope the world has at stopping these guys. And you could say, in short, that might be what starts the Cold War. I don't want to say as simple as that, because the Cold War is this infinitely complex event, but that in the power vacuum after World War II, you have the Soviet Union vying to control the world. You don't have anyone there to stop them except us. And so we have to step up and face them. Now, this puts us to about 1945, 1946. Things are going to get pretty bad pretty quick. And in the first few years, it looks like we might lose the Cold War before it even happens, or World War III might break out before cooler heads can prevail. That is the cliffhanger. Yeah, cliffhanger. And more importantly, yeah, about 11 minutes. Not too bad. Question box, real quick. Question from Joe. Joe asks, Mr. Frank, what's your favorite coffee? Whatever. Okay, clearly it's not a real question. I lied. Forgive me. Answer the questions. Submit the things. Do some mailbags this week. Believe in yourself. Believe in the country. Better dead than red. USA.